Have you ever had that strange moment when life feels ordinary on the outside, but deep inside, something whispers that the world is not as it seems? It's like waking up at midnight and hearing a sound you can't quite explain, subtle, soft, but impossible to ignore. Could that whisper be pointing us to something Jesus said long ago, a detail so small that most people overlook it, yet powerful enough to unlock the very mystery of the end times? Let me take you on a journey. Imagine, for a moment, that you've been preparing for an important trip. You have your bags packed, your schedule set, and your excitement high. But then, just as the train is about to leave, you realize you were waiting at the wrong platform all along. You see, it wasn't your suitcase or your planning that mattered. It was simply whether or not you were in the right place, at the right time, listening for the right call. That's how Jesus often spoke. He used ordinary, everyday images to reveal eternal truths: seeds, bread, vineyards, fishing nets. Things so familiar, they could almost slip by unnoticed. But hidden in those everyday words was a treasure meant only for those who were awake enough to see it. And when it comes to the end of all things, what many call a rapture, Jesus didn't hide the key inside complicated charts or mysterious codes. No, he tucked it into one quiet phrase, a phrase so ordinary that it's easy to miss. But once you notice it, you realize everything changes. Setting the stage. Now, think about how most people imagine the end of days. Trumpets blaring in the sky, earthquakes shaking the ground, people vanishing in a dramatic flash, like in a movie. It's loud, it's chaotic, it's cinematic. But what if Jesus painted a very different picture? What if he said it wouldn't come with fireworks or explosions, but with silence? Not in chaos, but in comfort. Not in broad daylight, but in the stillness of night. He said, 2 will be in one bed, one will be taken and the other left. Luke 17, verse 34. Simple, ordinary, almost too plain to notice. And yet, in those few words lies a secret so powerful that it reshapes how we think about readiness. Because here's the truth. Jesus wasn't describing a spectacle. He was describing a separation. And separations often don't come with noise. They come quietly, almost invisibly, like the moment a tide shifts on the shore. You don't see it immediately, but everything has already begun to move. The whisper of a different timeline. So, here's the unsettling thought. What if the moment has already begun? What if the signs aren't coming someday, but are unfolding right now, in the silence of our routines, while the world sleeps? You see, when Jesus chose the words that night, he wasn't being random. Night, in biblical language, often means more than just darkness in the sky. It represents spiritual sleep, distraction, numbness. A world that feels normal on the surface, but underneath, it's drifting into something dangerous. Doesn't that sound familiar? Wars on the news, families falling apart, love growing cold, values turned upside down. Life goes on, but deep down we feel like something is off. That's the spiritual night. And according to Jesus, it's in that very setting, not when the world panics, but when it relaxes, that God chooses to act. Why the ordinary matters. This changes everything. Because if the moment begins in silence, then the greatest danger isn't missing a trumpet blast. It's being asleep inside while life goes on outside. Think about it. How many people go through the motions of faith like sleepwalkers? They attend church. They sing songs. They even read the Bible out of habit. But inside, their hearts are numb, distracted, unprepared. It's like carrying a flashlight that only works once you're already lost. By then, it's too late. That's why Jesus said the wise virgins carried oil in reserve. The oil wasn't about last-minute preparation. It was about steady, daily readiness, drop by drop, long before the midnight cry arrived. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because Jesus didn't just speak of night. He also spoke of cry at midnight, a subtle warning, a spiritual alarm clock, echoing through the darkness. Not loud enough to wake everyone, but clear enough for those already watching. Invitation to the journey ahead. So here we are, standing in the silence of our own night. Maybe you've already felt that whisper inside, that restless feeling, that sense that something is shifting even though life looks normal. What if that whisper is the midnight cry? What if it's not about waiting for the spectacular, but about paying attention to the subtle? And what if the real question isn't when Jesus will come, but what condition he will find us in when he does? Because readiness isn't about fear. It isn't about panic. It's about being awake when the rest of the world is asleep. That's the story we're about to unfold together. In the next part, we'll look closely at how Jesus described this mysterious sequence, not through diagrams or codes, but through everyday images: night, cry, separation, and how those three simple words might just reveal the greatest hidden timeline in all of Scripture. So stay with me, because what comes next might change the way you see the world around you, and perhaps even the way you live tomorrow. The hidden pattern in Jesus' words. When Jesus spoke of two lying in one bed, or two women grinding grain, or two men working in a field, he wasn't merely describing random scenarios. He was giving us a pattern, a picture how the end will touch people who are side by side, yet heading toward two very different destinies. Think about that for a moment. Two people sharing the same space, the same job, even the same meal, yet one will be taken and the other left behind. It's almost unsettling, isn't it? Because it reminds us that faith is not inherited through closeness. Just because you sit in the same church pew, or grow up in the same family, or share the same bed, doesn't mean you share the same readiness. Jesus was pointing us to a truth both sobering and freeing. Salvation is deeply personal. No one can believe for you. No one can stay awake for you. At the final moment, when the separation comes, it won't matter who stood beside you. It will only matter where your heart stood before God. Ordinary settings, eternal outcomes. Now let's pause here. Notice what Jesus chose. A bed, a meal, a field. These aren't religious spaces. He didn't say two priests at the altar or two scribes reading the scrolls. No, he chose the ordinary rhythms of life. Why? Because he was showing us that his return won't interrupt a worship service. It will interrupt everyday life. People will be asleep, working, cooking, eating, completely unaware. This is why Jesus compared his coming to the days of Noah. People were marrying, building homes, planting gardens, living normal lives, until the day the flood came. And that's exactly his point. The end does not arrive when we expect it, or in the place we expect it. It comes in the midst of the ordinary. So here's the question. If the end is going to arrive in the middle of life as usual, are we living our usual life in a way that keeps us ready? The days of Noah and Lot. Jesus didn't stop with Noah. He also mentioned Lot. Think back to the story of Lot in Sodom. Life in that city looked prosperous. The markets were full. The houses were beautiful. Business was booming. If you walked through Sodom the day before its destruction, you wouldn't have sensed the disaster that was about to fall. That's the dangerous thing about comfort. It can make us blind. The Bible says Lot hesitated to leave, even when the angels urged him. Why? Because his heart was tied to the city's life. He wasn't ready to let go. And Jesus said that's exactly what it will be like. People will cling to their possessions, their routines, their comforts, even as the world around them shifts toward judgment. That's why he gave a haunting warning. Remember Lot's wife. She turned back. And in that one glance, we see the danger of divided hearts, the great separation. If we step back, we see that Jesus is describing one great moment of separation, a line drawn between the watchful and the distracted, the prepared and the unprepared. But here's the mystery. That separation isn't something that happens only on that final day. In many ways, it's already happening. Every choice we make, every moment we either say yes or no to God, every decision to live awake or to live asleep, it's all shaping the path we're on. The separation doesn't start in a single instant. It starts now, in the small choices of ordinary days. And maybe that's why Jesus used the image of night, because night is subtle. Darkness doesn't fall all at once. It slips in quietly, moment by moment, until suddenly you realize you can no longer see the way. The midnight cry. But Jesus didn't leave us in the darkness. In his parable of the 10 virgins, he gave us the image of the midnight cry. At midnight the cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom. Come out to meet him." Notice, it didn't say the bridegroom appeared first. It said the cry was heard first. That's important, because before the visible coming, There will be an audible warning. Before the sudden moment of separation, there will be a whisper, a call, a stirring in the hearts of those who are listening. I believe many of us can feel that even now, a sense that something is shifting, a tug in the spirit that says, wake up, pay attention, don't drift. The cry is not about fear. It's about mercy. It's God's way of shaking us gently before the world is shaken violently. The oil of readiness. Now, the heart of the parable is oil. 5 wise virgins carried extra oil. 5 foolish ones did not. What does the oil represent? The ongoing, living presence of the Holy Spirit. The foolish ones thought a single lamp of yesterday's flame would be enough for tomorrow's darkness. But the wise knew better. They carried a reserve. That's what daily intimacy with God looks like. It's not enough to rely on a memory of last year's prayer, or last month's worship, or a childhood faith. Oil runs out. The flame needs refilling. Readiness is not built in crisis. It's built in consistency. An invitation, not a threat. Sometimes, when people talk about the end times, the tone becomes heavy, fearful, almost threatening. But listen carefully. Jesus never meant these words to paralyze us with fear. He meant them to invite us into deeper love and alertness. When a groom tells his bride to be ready, it's not because he wants to frighten her. It's because he loves her, and he longs for the joy of that wedding day. In the same way, every warning Jesus gave was actually a love letter. A whisper, don't miss this. Stay close to me. Be awake. I want you with me when the moment comes. A world asleep, a people awake. Look around our world today. Technology is booming. Entertainment fills every hour. News cycles keep us distracted. It feels like everyone is awake because everything is buzzing. And yet, spiritually, so many are asleep. But here's the good news. Jesus calls us to be different, to be awake in a world that's drifting, to carry oil in a world that has empty lamps, to hear the midnight cry when others only hear silence. That's the invitation before us, not to fear the night, but to shine in it, looking ahead. And this is where we pause. Because everything we've seen so far, ordinary settings, sudden separations, the midnight cry, the oil of readiness, all of it is pointing us forward. Toward what? Toward a climactic moment when the hidden becomes visible, when the whisper becomes a trumpet, when the bridegroom himself appears. That's where we're headed next. There's a moment in every story when everything comes into focus. All the details, all the hints, all the subtle signs suddenly converge. And you realize the meaning was there all along. You just needed the eyes to see it. That's exactly what happens when we step back and look at Jesus' words about the night, the cry, and the great separation. Jesus wasn't trying to frighten us with visions of chaos or doom. He was gently preparing us, pointing us to the reality that his return would come in the middle of what feels ordinary, a night like any other night, a time when people are eating, working, sleeping, planning tomorrow, without realizing that eternity could break in at any moment. And that's the beauty and the weight of his teaching. Because if the extraordinary breaks into the ordinary, then the most important preparation is not waiting for drama in the sky, but living faithfully day by day when no one else is watching. Think about it. The bridesmaids in the parable weren't caught unprepared because they were evil people. They were caught because they let ordinary routine dull their vigilance. Their lamps were real, but their oil had run dry. They had the form of faith without the fire of faith. And when the midnight cry came, the difference was clear. Some were ready, some were not. That's not a parable meant to make us anxious. It's an invitation to live awake, to treat even the quiet nights as holy, to guard our oil, the small, daily acts of trust, prayer, forgiveness, obedience. That's how you stay ready. And here's the sobering part. Jesus didn't describe this as a general announcement where everyone has time to gather their belongings. No, he described it as sudden, personal, immediate. 2 people in the same bed, one taken, the other left. 2 working side by side, one taken, the other left. The separation isn't about geography. It's about readiness. That's why this message matters so much. Because it's easy to assume that if you're surrounded by faith, or living in a Christian home, or attending church, you'll be swept along automatically. But Jesus' words make it clear. Preparation cannot be borrowed. Oil cannot be shared at the last minute. Readiness is personal, and it's revealed when no one else is watching. So let me ask you directly, if it all began tonight, if the cry at midnight echoed through your own life, would you be ready? Or would you be scrambling for the oil you never took time to gather? This isn't about predicting dates or obsessing over signs. It's about something much deeper, living in such a way that whenever he comes, you won't be surprised. You'll be found faithful. That's what it means to stay awake in the night. And maybe you're wondering, but how do I live like that? How do I prepare? The answer is both simple and profound. Preparation is not about doing something dramatic. It's about doing the small things consistently. It's choosing prayer instead of neglect, forgiveness instead of bitterness, faith instead of fear, hope instead of despair. It's filling your lamp drop by drop, day by day. Because when the night comes, and it won't be the dramatic gestures that matter. It will be the daily oil of faith that carries you through the darkness until the bridegroom arrives. Friend, this isn't meant to leave you with fear. It's meant to leave you with urgency. Jesus told us these words not to confuse us, but to awaken us, to remind us that the ordinary nights we take for granted are the very moments when eternity is drawing near. So maybe tonight is that night. Maybe this very message is your midnight cry. The question is, how will you respond? Will you wait for another sign, another confirmation, or will you choose, right now, to live awake, to keep your lamp burning, to guard your oil? The truth is, the separation is coming. And when it does, there will be no time to prepare. The time is now. If this message stirred something in your heart, don't let it fade. Take it as an invitation. Start filling your lamp today. Pray. Seek him. Return to him with all your heart. Because when that night comes, and it will, you'll want to be among those who are ready, not those who are left behind in silence. And as we close, I want to leave you with this final thought. Readiness is not a burden. It's a gift. It's not about fear, it's about freedom. Because when you're prepared, the night doesn't scare you. The cry at midnight doesn't shock you. Instead, it becomes the sweetest sound you could ever hear, the sound that the bridegroom is finally here. So stay awake, keep your lamp burning, guard your oil, and let the cry at midnight be the moment you've been waiting for, not the one you regret.